Well, today was something of a D-Day, but platinum companies are saying this evening their government's task team has now withdrawn from the latest talks. In a joint statement, they say the talks facilitated by the Minister of Mineral Resources have dissolved without an outcome. The minister had warned he would walk away if there was no deal by today. Union Amcu, meanwhile, says the strike, now in its fifth month, continues. Well, to discuss, we're joined by mining analyst Bongani Mbindwane. Good evening to you, Bongani. There was a lot of positive sentiment when the minister got involved. What do you think of his decision to throw in the towel now?
Well, I mean, government's role is not really to be involved in negotiations in the workplace. These are industrial issues, and politics really, and politicians should keep away. What they ought to do, which I think the minister tried to do, continuing from where former Deputy President Motlanthe had done, was to create a conducive environment for the parties to meet. So having done that, I think it's a right move to let the private sector be private, so that you don't get government being a party to private sector settlements.
It's been hard for government because they've also been criticised for the period when they were not involved, however.
Well, I mean, that's actually not true, because the Deputy President, Motlanthe, then had always been involved, and in fact, during his time... Not
as forcefully, but you're right, he had started the talks.
Indeed. During his time, you saw Amcu moving to saying, instead of a once-off 12,500 rands increase or adjustment of wages, they then thought a few years, 4 years in fact, will be okay for the wages to be phased in. We have a problem. International markets are looking at this thing very strangely. Everybody in the market thought that as the elections come and go, you'll see a resolution in the matter. As you know, there were two, or rather three, political parties that were very, very much involved in the Amcu strike. You have UDM, Bantu Olomisa, you have EFF with Mr. Malema, and you have another new outfit, WASP, which is led by a once Secretary General of NUMSA, in fact.
Well, let's talk about this, because rather than things being resolved, it seems like the rhetoric is escalating a little bit, especially from government. It's talking about a third force being involved. It's concerned about the EFF being involved. Do you think this points to frustration with Amcu and with its possible political ambitions?
There's a problem always if politics enters the workplace, and this is what you've seen here. Both UDM, EFF, and WASP have been really, really involved in advising Amcu, and we've seen that publicly, public display of that. So another twist to this, which is very important, which we always forget, is where Mr. Mathunjwa comes from. He's a former National Union of Mine Workers official, and that alone brings in another dynamic, because he has to show off that, in fact, he has a better skill than NUM to negotiate. NUM and NUMSA, who have a settlement already in the same negotiations. And with Mr. Mathunjwa's 35,000 workers or supporters and members on strike, the other 30,000 of the workers are really not on strike, but still are not able to go to work. You must not forget that we come from a time when Anglo Platinum was looking at retrenching at least 10,000 people not so long ago, 2 years ago, until the then Minister Shabangu, intervened, and the number was reduced to 4,000. That is 2 years ago. If the situation is what it is today, rest assured, at least 20,000 people will have to lose jobs this year.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Where to from here? Because we have these people who are desperate, reports of hunger on the Platinum Belt, and workers really do want a better wage. On the other hand, government throwing in the towel. On the other hand, the platinum companies seem quite firm that they want the strike to end. Talk of them going to the Labour Court to get the strike certificate withdrawn. Do they have legal grounds to do that, and how do you think this will play out in the long term?
Well, there are aspects in case law of economic sabotage that they can play on and reasonableness that they can play on. What is critical at this point is that indeed people who were earning a wage of sort are now destitute, and dignity has been removed away from them. I can assure you, Mr. Matunja does not get food from the gift of the givers. Neither does Mr. Malema nor General Bantu Olomisa. But the people who are destitute ought to now say, we've been had, let's go back to work whilst we negotiate. Going back to work after really having suffered this long is not something that you must take lightly. You must go back to work and still say you are negotiating, it's not done yet.
So you believe that's a possible outcome?
It's a possible outcome. However, Parliament must not relax. It's not government, but Parliament that must not relax. They must find a way that they amend the Act, the Labour Relations Act, to include proper bargaining and a proper voting or balloting of employees who intend to go to work, to strike rather. At the workplace, before a strike is announced or declared, employees ought to be able to properly be balloted secretively so that they can decide for themselves. Secondly, strikes must have, by legislation, a limit in days. In Australia, for instance, strikes can go up to 25 days. You can look at models like that. You can't have perpetual strikes. That's not the nature of why people negotiate on wages. And finally, the issue about this particular issue that we're facing is not about wages per se. It's about the holistic restructuring of the structures of the industry itself.
Well, we will be following this closely. Thank you for your analysis. That was Bongani Mbindwane, mining analyst. A quick look at the numbers.